Welcome to the inaugural, the premiere, the introductory episode of It's a Long Road, the Rambo series podcast. I will be your host on every single episode of this podcast that will delve into, explore, and talk about the Rambo film franchise series. My name is Ryan Rebalkin. You may have heard me on my other podcast called Going the Distance, the Rocky series podcast. And yes, folks, we went the distance with that podcast. We covered every single Rocky film from Rockies 1 through Rocky Balboa. And of course, we covered the Creed series, both of those films. During my time doing the Rocky series, I've often discussed, of course, the Rambo series. Of course, we're talking about Sylvester Stallone, and the Rambo series inevitably comes up. And I'm always amazed, and I have been amazed, by how many people like the Rocky films that don't like the Rambo films, and vice versa. Those who like the Rambo films but don't like the Rocky films. I'm not in either one of those camps. I enjoy and love both franchises probably the same. When I started podcasting, I chose the Rocky films just because maybe just a tad. There's more emotional oomph. There's more, characters to talk about, and so I think for content-wise, yeah, maybe the Rocky franchise just has more pieces, from Apollo to Paulie to Adrian. All the great villains or opponents that Rocky faces. So it's just a plethora of discussion points. So speaking of which, if you're a huge Rocky fan and you stumbled across this Rambo podcast for the first time and you want to hear my thoughts and the thoughts of my hosts, Katie and Kyle, check out our other podcast called, we did the whole series called Going the Distance, but we'll be starting, or have already started, depending when you're listening to this, another podcast called One More Round, the Rocky series podcast. So again, there's two Rocky podcasts, Going the Distance, the Rocky series podcast, and One More Round, the Rocky series podcast. Check those out if you're a Rocky fan. Now, back to the Rambo franchise. Why Rambo? Why John J. Rambo? I love this character. This film character has brought me so much joy in my life. I was a young child, of course, when First Blood came out. I was about 7 or 8 years old when the film came out, but I was probably 9 or 10 when I first saw it on VHS. Of course, I was too young, and my parents would never have taken me to the theater to see this film, but I did see it on VHS, and I did see it when I was rather young. I remember the title First Blood thinking, oh boy, it's going to be violent, or this is going to be crazy. There's blood in the title, right? And sure, there's some blood in this film, but I think the most blood we see is literally the blood coming from Rambo's arm when he cuts it on that great fall from the cliff. And let me tell you, when I was a kid, I swore I used to tell my friends, John Rambo really cut his arm, man. Or I would say Stallone did. That was real, man. It looked so real to me as a kid. I used to believe that Stallone truly cut his arm and sewed it up for us on screen. Well, that's just the beauty of movie magic, I guess. What are we going to do on this podcast? Well, we're going to do the same thing that we did on the Going the Distance podcast and the One More Round Rocky series podcast. We're going to go through each film in order from the first Rambo film to the last. Yes, we are going to cover Last Blood, the much maligned fifth film in the Rambo franchise. And of course, that topic and all the other films will come up as we discuss the films. Now, you heard me say we. Who's we, Ryan? Well, you're talking by yourself right now. This will be, or probably will be, the only episode where Ryan, talks alone or speaks alone. This episode is a combination of, introducing myself, the podcast, what we're going to do, what you can expect, how you can hook up with us on social media, and all that good stuff. Because I kind of want to get the word out there, build a little bit of buzz that this podcast is real and it's going to happen and it's going to be a lot of fun. But what I'm doing is I'm going to invite a lot of my friends. Yes, Ryan has friends. I made a lot of great friends from the Rocky series podcast days, Going the Distance, other podcast hosts. So these regulars are going to rotate through this series. So we're going to get other podcast hosts, friends of Ryan, guests, and what have you will come on the show. And wherever I happen to be in the film, they're going to jump on and they're going to give their 2 bits on the scenes of that time of their guest spot. Of course, these guests will give their overall feelings on the Rambo films in general, or what have you. I would highly expect that many of these guest hosts will return more than once. You can just follow me, the host, Ryan, on Twitter at Ryan Rebalkin, or you can follow the show itself at It's a Long Road TH1. Now, why TH1 at the end of that? I don't know. Again, It's a Long Road TH1. The numerical number 1. You know, when I created the Twitter account, it automatically generated it. I don't know, but it's there. If you can also follow me at Ryan Rebalkin if you want to see the tweets that I do that have nothing to do with this film. Okay, well, what else? Oh, yeah, if you want to send us an email, this one might be a little bit easier. Send me an email at ramboseriespodcast@gmail.com. And as the series and as the podcast continues, I would love to hear your feedback, your questions, your concerns, your queries, your comments, your compliments, and all that good stuff. Well, here we go, guys. It's a long road, and I really hope it's not a long road in a bad way. I hope it's a long road in a good way. I look forward to hearing what we have to say about this franchise. I love the Rambo franchise. John Rambo is such an interesting, intriguing character. And I'm also going to probably do interviews on this podcast, much like I did on Going the Distance. I'm going to grab who I can, when I can, where I can, from those associated who are still alive with this with this film franchise. I have reached out to David Morrell, so I'm really hoping at the time of this recording we get something set up. I'm hopeful. So again, look in the future feed for the interview with the creator, with the man who created the myth, the legend, John Rambo. Well, guys, that's about it. Again, I just wanted to get your head spinning about this, and you have time right now to send me an email or message me on Twitter and say, hey, these are the things I hope you do on the show. We're at the beginning. Join me, join the journey, start at the beginning. Say you're one of those people who started at the very beginning of It's a Long Road. I'd love to hear from you guys, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, look forward to hearing from you. How shall I end this podcast? I am the first podcast to cover Rambo in this way. I guarantee it. How will I end this podcast? See, on the Rocky Series podcast, I end each one with ding ding. Maybe this? Live for nothing or die for something. See you on the season premiere, folks. First Blood, episode 1, coming next.